Stop for a moment. Observe your life. Think about everything you have achieved. Maybe you have a good job. Maybe you have a respectable degree, a comfortable apartment, a car, a life that, for many, would be a reason for envy. Or maybe you are still chasing these things, convinced that when you finally have them, then yes, you will feel at peace. But tell the truth. When you lay your head on the pillow, that peace you so desire, is it there? Or is there restlessness, an emptiness that cannot be filled, an anxiety that you try to disguise with more work, more achievements, more distractions? Because that's what you were taught, that happiness comes from what you possess, from what you achieve, from what you appear to be. This is the great lie, the lie that sustains modern life, a way of life that Erich Fromm exposed like no one else. He realized what few have the courage to admit, that we live in a state of inner war, a war created by a culture obsessed with having, with accumulation, control, appearance. From a young age, we are conditioned to believe that our worth depends on what we possess. The grades in school, material goods, the number of followers, social status. All of this becomes an extension of our identity. We are no longer who we are what we have. And the more we have, the more fear we feel of losing it. The more insecure we become, the more dependent we are on external validation. And that's why you can look at someone seemingly successful, with money, fame, status, and see in that person's eyes a silent sadness, an emptiness that no achievement can erase. Because while living in the mode of having, it doesn't matter how much you accumulate, peace never arrives. Fromm said, "As long as you live to possess, control, and appear, you will be at war with yourself." And this war is insidious. It manifests in constant anxiety, in endless comparison with others, in the fear of being forgotten, of being irrelevant, in the feeling that something is always missing. But the most dangerous thing of all is that most people don't even realize they are trapped in this cycle. Because the culture we live in reinforces the illusion. We are bombarded daily with messages that say, buy more, achieve more, show more. As if happiness were a commodity to be purchased, as if peace were a performance goal, but it's not. And the sooner you understand this, the sooner you can escape this prison. In this video, we will explore this invisible trap in depth, the mode of having. We will understand why it dominates modern society, what its hidden effects are, and why it prevents us from living a full life. But more importantly, we will discover what the other path is, the path of being. A path that does not depend on what you possess, but on who you truly are. Get ready. This will not be a comfortable video. It will confront you. It will shake certainties that you may not even know you carry. But if you have the courage to follow through to the end, you can take the first step to free yourself from this inner war. Because believe me, you will never find peace until you learn this. Since the early years of life, almost without realizing it, each of us begins to be shaped by a system that values having above all else. As a child, we learn that good grades bring approval, that new toys guarantee affection, that wearing the right clothes generates acceptance. Over the years, this logic deepens. Society says, want to be someone? Have a good job? Have a car? Have a desirable body? Be successful. Everything revolves around the verb to have. But there is one detail that few notice. Every time you believe that your worth depends on what you possess, you drift a little further away from who you really are. You start to build an identity based on the external. And the stronger this identity, the more fragile it becomes. Because everything you have can be lost. Money, appearance, fame, status. None of this is permanent. And when what you are gets confused with what you have, any threat to those possessions becomes a threat to your very identity. That's why so many live in a constant state of anxiety. the fear of losing, the need to maintain, the incessant comparison with others, an invisible prison that consumes energy, time, and mental health. Erich Fromm was straightforward. The mode of having is a pathology of modern culture. It generates an endless cycle of dissatisfaction, because the more someone accumulates, the more they realize it is not enough. The pleasure of a new achievement soon fades, and the next goal arises, the next obsession, the next artificially created need. And so, many spend their entire lives in a never-ending race, believing that one day, upon achieving one more thing, they will finally feel peace. But that day never comes. Worse still, the mode of having is not limited to material possessions. It even contaminates human relationships. Many treat their partners, friends, and colleagues as just another item to be possessed. They say, "My boyfriend, my wife, my followers, my employees." People become objects of possession, and like any object, they must meet certain expectations. If they do not, they are discarded. This way of living isolates us. It creates a culture of superficiality, distrust, and alienation. Because when everything and everyone become commodities, true human connection disappears. Deep down, human beings long for meaning, belonging, and authentic love. But the mode of having makes that impossible. As Fromm said, the illusion of possessing suffocates the capacity to be. And so, the trap is set. A lifetime dedicated to possessing, controlling, appearing, and what remains? Emptiness, restlessness, anguish. But there is an even deeper hidden price. A devastating psychological effect that silently corrodes those who remain trapped in this cycle. And it is precisely about this hidden price that we will talk next. Get ready, because that is where the true impact of this trap is revealed. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. At first glance, living to conquer, accumulate, and control may even seem like a legitimate strategy. After all, who doesn't want financial security? Who doesn't seek recognition or a comfortable life? But what almost no one realizes, and what Erich Fromm made clear in his work, is that the psychological price for this choice is much higher than one might think. The mode of having not only fuels an incessant race for more, it gradually poisons the relationship that the individual has with themselves, with others, and with the world around them. In the beginning, everything seems to work. Achievements bring small doses of pleasure, a sense of accomplishment. But this pleasure is fleeting. It soon fades, making way for a new restlessness. Because the mind, accustomed to measuring its own worth by possessions and status, never finds a resting point. There is always something more to be conquered. Always a new step, a new object of desire. This constant state of lack generates chronic anxiety, the fear of losing what one has, the fear of not being enough in the eyes of others, the fear of falling behind in a world that demands performance and comparison at every moment. And when anxiety settles in as the backdrop of life, it undermines mental health, weakens emotional bonds, and distorts the perception of reality. The person begins to live in a state of constant alertness, with a restlessness that even the greatest achievements cannot silence. Because deep down, there is a dissonance. No matter how much one conquers, something inside knows that this does not fill the existential void. This void is the second hidden price of the mode of having, a profound sense of lack of meaning. Even surrounded by possessions and achievements, the individual realizes, consciously or unconsciously, that all of it is transient, fragile, superficial. And the more they try to drown this void with new acquisitions, the deeper it becomes. This is the root of the existential boredom that Fromm described. A boredom that does not arise from the absence of activities, but from the absence of meaning. Because a life dedicated solely to having does not answer the most fundamental questions. Who am I? What is my purpose? What truly connects me to existence? And there is also a third price, perhaps the most painful: alienation. When everything becomes an object of possession, belongings, people, even one's own identity, the individual distances themselves from their true essence. They begin to live a manufactured version of themselves, shaped by external expectations and the cultural imperative of consumption. Authenticity is lost. Relationships become superficial, and the connection with the deeper dimensions of life, love, compassion, creativity, spirituality, weakens. Erich Fromm was incisive. The mode of having isolates man from his true nature and deprives him of the authentic experience of living. And when this happens, the person not only feels empty and anxious, they become strange to themselves, a disconnected being, floating amidst an existence they no longer understand. This is the hidden price that millions pay every day, often without even realizing it. But what if there were an alternative? What if there existed another way of living, capable of dissolving this anxiety, filling the void, and restoring the connection to what truly matters? It is precisely about this other path that we will talk next. A path that Fromm called the mode of being, and that can radically transform your way of existing. Yes, there is an alternative, but it is a path that requires a break from everything that has been conditioned throughout life. It is not about a technique or a magic formula, it is about a radical change of consciousness. Erich Fromm called this alternative a mode of being. And the difference between this mode and the mode of having could not be deeper. In the mode of having, identity is tied to possessions, achievements, to what is displayed to the world. It is an existence based on the exterior, on what can be accumulated, measured, shown. In the mode of being, on the other hand, the experience of life occurs through authentic encounters with the present, with others, and with one's own inner essence. In being, one does not seek to possess love, one seeks to live it. One does not try to control life, one allows it to flow and be lived with presence and authenticity. One does not measure one's worth by comparisons. One recognizes the intrinsic value of one's being, simply for existing. Fromm said that the mode of being manifests in authentic activities, in creativity, in genuine presence, in the capacity to love unconditionally. It is a state in which the individual feels connected not only with their own emotions and thoughts, but with life as a whole. In this mode of existence, anxiety loses its power. Because there is nothing to defend, there is no status to maintain, there are no masks to uphold. Instead of fighting against the impermanence of things, the person aligns with it. They understand that everything flows, everything changes, everything renews. And with that, a peace arises that does not depend on external circumstances. Fromm emphasized that the mode of being is not passivity, much less resignation. On the contrary, it is a state of full activity, of deep engagement with life. When one lives in the mode of being, each moment can become an expression of one's own essence. Talking with a friend, contemplating a landscape, creating something with one's own hands, listening with true attention. All of this takes on a deeper meaning. Because one is no longer chasing after something, one is living. Simply living. And it is precisely for this reason that so few can make this transition. Because the change is not just external, it is internal. It requires a letting go of old beliefs. It requires courage to release the ego and the attachment to possessions and status. And this generates fear. Fear of losing the identity built over the years. Fear of being seen as someone who no longer fits the world's standards. Fear of discovering who one truly is, without the masks of having. This fear is, in fact, the main obstacle that prevents millions of people from making this choice. But why is this fear so powerful? And why is it so difficult for most to abandon the mode of having and embrace the mode of being? This is what we will discuss next. Get ready, because understanding these barriers is essential for anyone who truly wishes to transform their life. If the mode of being brings authentic peace, a real connection with life, and an inner freedom that the mode of having can never offer, why do so few manage to embrace this transformation? Why, even knowing the damage that the cycle of accumulation and comparison generates, does the majority remain trapped in it? The answer is rooted in deep layers of the psyche and the invisible structure of the society we live in. From an early age, we have been conditioned by our parents, schools, media, culture, to associate our worth with what we possess or appear to be. It is not just about material goods. It is the entire identity that has been built on this foundation. Achievements, titles, appearance, social status. We are led to believe that without these elements, we have no value. That without a good job, without recognition from others, without social acceptance, we are nobody. That is why abandoning the mode of having requires facing an ancestral fear, the fear of disappearing. Because deep down, the identity built around having is an armor, fragile yet comfortable. It offers a false sense of security. If I have enough, I will be loved, I will be respected, I will be protected. Letting go of this armor means exposing oneself, revealing who one is without adornments. And for many, this is unbearable. Moreover, there is the fear of rejection. We live in a society that still superficially values material success and image. Those who choose to live more authentically, more aligned with being, risk being misunderstood. They may be seen as strange, naive, non-competitive. The social pressure, even if veiled, is brutal. And there is an even more subtle, yet no less powerful obstacle: habit. Decades of life shaped by the mode of having create automatic patterns of thought, behavior, and reaction. Even when the conscious mind recognizes the damage of this model, the body and psyche continue to operate on autopilot. They always revert to comparison, to the relentless pursuit, to the fear of scarcity. Breaking these habits requires constant vigilance, deep self-knowledge, and above all, a commitment to one's own inner growth. As Fromm said, authentic freedom is not something that is won once and for all. It is a constant movement, a renewed choice at every moment. Choosing the mode of being is not a one-time event. It is a process, a path that requires discipline, courage, and patience. But how to begin this journey? How to take the first steps to break with old patterns and cultivate a new way of existing? This is precisely what we will explore next. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebooks. Beyond the Shadow breaks down Jung's core ideas, while Dialogues with the Unconscious gives you a 30-day path to apply them in your life. Both are linked in the pinned comment. The journey from having to being does not happen by chance. It is not something that simply occurs over time, nor a transformation that comes from the outside. It is a choice that requires awareness, intention, and above all, constant action. But where to start? How can someone navigate such a radically different path in a world that glorifies accumulation and appearance? The first step is self-awareness. It is necessary to see with total honesty where and how the mode of having operates in your life. What are the areas where you still measure your worth by possessions or status? In what moments do you act more to appear than to be? This investigation is not comfortable. It reveals difficult truths, but it is absolutely necessary. Without this deep look, the old pattern will continue to operate in the shadows, guiding your choices without you realizing it. The second step is detachment, but it is not about renouncing everything or living like a hermit. The detachment that Fromm proposes is an inner detachment, a change in the relationship with things, people, and even with oneself. Possessing is not the problem. The problem is being possessed by what you own. When an object or an image defines who you are, you become a slave to it. The challenge is to learn to enjoy things, experiences, without letting them determine your worth or your identity. Thirdly, it is essential to cultivate authentic experiences. This means engaging in activities that express who you are, not what society expects you to be. Creating, sharing, learning, loving, not to impress, but to fully live the moment. It is in the flow of these experiences that the mode of being flourishes. Each moment of presence, of true connection, weakens the dominance of having a little more. Another essential aspect is the quality of relationships. Relationships based on having are utilitarian. What can this person provide me? Relationships based on being are authentic encounters between two consciousnesses. It is in true listening, in the welcoming gaze, in the unmasked dialogue that the space for being is built. Therefore, surrounding yourself with people who share these values is vital fuel for transformation. Finally, it is necessary to develop inner courage. Courage to face the fear of losing status, of being misunderstood, of not meeting external expectations. Courage to say, I choose to be. Even when the whole world seems to value the opposite. Even when the inner voice, shaped by years of conditioning, still whispers that this is risky. Because it is risky, yes. It is risky to step out of the herd. It is risky to abandon old certainties. But the greatest risk is another. To live an entire life as a prisoner of the mode of having, and in the end realize that you were never truly free. Now, you already know the way. You know what needs to be done. But there is a decision that still needs to be made. And it is precisely about this that we will talk next. The choice between continuing in the cycle of having, with all its weight and suffering, or embracing once and for all the mode of being. And this choice, no one can make for you. Now everything is clear. You have seen how the mode of having works, how it seeps into every aspect of life, shaping the way you see yourself, how you relate to others, how you seek meaning. You have also seen the hidden price paid for living this way: constant anxiety, existential emptiness, alienation from your own essence. And you discovered that there is an alternative, the mode of being, a lighter, more authentic way of existence, more connected to what truly matters. But the question that remains is simple and inevitable. What choice will you make? Will you continue in the old cycle, accumulating, competing, pretending, hoping that one day, by some miracle, peace will finally arrive? Or will you start, here and now, to cultivate a new way of living? Because it must be said honestly, as long as you live in the mode of having, you will be at war with yourself. It doesn't matter how much you achieve. It doesn't matter what you show the world. The emptiness will still be there. The peace you seek will never come from outside. But when you choose to be, something changes. Anxiety loses its grip. The masks fall away, and an inner space begins to open. A space where true freedom, true love, and true peace can flourish. This choice is not easy. It requires courage. It requires presence. It requires a daily commitment to self-knowledge. But it is a choice worth making. Because in the end, it is not what you possess that defines your life. It is who you choose to be. Now, I want to hear from you. What impacted you the most in this video? What point made you reflect on your own life? Write in the comments. Your perspective can inspire others who are also on this path. And if you feel that this content touched you, If you want to continue on this journey of self-knowledge, be sure to watch the next video. The journey of self-knowledge and reflection does not end here, and the next steps are essential. See you there.